You know, in every Bond film, you got that one scene with Bond and the villain dueling with each other's egos. Well, Spectre has that scene. Unfortunately, while it was playing out, all I could really think of was this.
Uh-oh! Someone has some daddy issues.
For me, this is a dad issue.
Dad issue! The dad! Deadbeat me dad! Oh. Daddy didn't love me!
And it's all downhill from there. Spectre is the fourth 007 film to star Daniel Craig in the title role of James Bond. Now, I have consistently loved this rebooted series for James Bond. Casino Royale was great. I think Martin Campbell did a terrific job of reviving the character, just like he did with GoldenEye, and it was interesting to finally see a Bond on screen that actually resembled the James Bond from the books. Quantum of Solace was also great, and I'm sorry, it has to be the most underrated and underappreciated Bond film ever made, and it actually kind of bugs me that so many people hate it, because in my opinion it exceeded every expectation that I had for it. I love the story, I loved how it finally showed what James Bond was like when he was pushed over the edge. The Bond girl, played by Olga Kurylenko, was wonderful, the development between Bond and M was a nice touch, and the action was every bit as impressive as Casino Royale. If I'm being honest, I actually liked it more than Casino Royale, but that's just me. Skyfall, however, was the movie that brought the relationship between Bond and M full circle, and Silva, played by Javier Bardem, is without a doubt the best villain of the Daniel Craig era. It was well-paced, introduced us to Moneypenny and Q for the first time in this reboot series, and of course, left itself open for more sequels to come. Now we have the newest movie, Spectre. James Bond uncovers information regarding his past that leads him to the underground criminal organization known as Spectre. Meanwhile, MQ and Moneypenny are back at MI6 reenacting the plot of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. And no, I don't just mean they're similar, I mean they are verbatim the exact same thing. Now, with all the things I said about the first three movies, you should guess that I had pretty high hopes and expectations going into this new one. I was so pumped for this film, which is why it actually pisses me off to say that I didn't really like it that much. Now keep in mind, I'm not saying it's bad like it's Die Another Day bad. No, it's not even close to being on that level of awful. It does have redeeming qualities that make it a watchable film, but it's still the weakest in the reboot series by far, and an overall disappointment to me. The external plot, as I said earlier, is the exact same thing as Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I can't really say that Spectre ripped off of that movie, as both were being made at the same time. I mean, Rogue Nation just came out a few months ago, but it's so much that story that all I could think watching it was just how much Mission Impossible did it better. I mean, immensely better. Here they make it so predictable that it just took me out of the movie every time it came up, and that's pretty much the biggest problem with this movie. The writing isn't very strong and comes off as being very convoluted and forced a lot of the time. And it's a bit sad when you realize that this movie had the same writers as the last three. As far as the villain is concerned, I'll be fair, Christoph Waltz does give a very good performance in this movie. In the whole 15 minutes of screen time he actually has. This movie is 2.5 hours long. He's barely in it, and it's such a letdown. Now, I won't spoil who it is, even though, like, if you are a James Bond fanatic, you should be able to guess who it is just based on the title of this movie alone. But he is a villain that we've seen in older James Bond films. And knowing that, it's so sad that this actor is never given a chance to shine as this villain or really make a lasting impression. I mean, this is a 2-time Academy Award-winning actor. He's completely wasted in this. He barely does shit. This movie tries way too hard to incorporate things from the last 3 movies that it just becomes this cluttered and convoluted mess. They try to make it so that Christoph Waltz's character was responsible for all the stuff that happened in the last 3 movies, and that he is, quote, unquote, the author of Bond's pain. But when you actually take the time to think about how they go about it, and then take the time to watch the other 3 movies, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. They also try to give Bond and the villain a deeper kind of story than they've ever had in the past, and it doesn't work at all. I'm all for the hero and the villain having, like, connections from their past, like Shredder and Splinter, perfect example. Here, it didn't work at all. It just did not work. If anything, it makes the villain more of a pouty child than an evil mastermind, and I don't really know what the writers were thinking, to be honest.
Daddy didn't love me!
Yep, that's pretty much the villain's motive in a nutshell. It's kind of sad. Now, what did I like in this movie? Well, the film is beautifully shot. In fact, it's one of the most well-shot films in the James Bond franchise. This movie looks fantastic. The action scenes pale in comparison to the other films in my opinion, but for some of them, they are still enjoyable. I liked the chase scene through the mountains and the opening scene with the helicopter. Some of the action works and works well, some of it just falls flat. The acting, superb. Daniel Craig is still an amazing Bond. The supporting cast is awesome. In fact, I really liked that MQ and Moneypenny had a lot more to do in this film than they did in the last one. And Lea Seydoux as the main Bond girl was a typical Bond girl. Nothing special, but nothing bad. The song in the opening credits was also fine. Not as memorable as Skyfall or You Know My Name, but still a nice tune that fit the tone of the film nicely. Overall, I can't say that Spectre is a terrible movie, but I certainly would never call it good either. It has its enjoyable moments, but also has terrible pacing, asinine writing, and it wastes its potential by barely giving its main villain any screen time. Look, I'm not a noob here. I know this is a James Bond film. You're bound to see stupid shit in a Bond film. I get that. And I'm not even gonna pretend like the last three didn't have their fair share of stupid moments, because they did. Okay, all James Bond films do. The little dumb things are what kind of give the James Bond films their charm. But I'm sorry, there's a limit. This film takes those stupid ideas and elevates them to a level of batshit insanity that I can't even fathom in my head. The internal plot of this movie sucks. The external plot is beyond predictable. The writing in this movie is awful. It's awful. It's rather sad that this is the movie that made money when The Man from U.N.C.L.E., a far superior spy film with more clever writing, ended up being a flop. I have no doubt that this will also surpass Mission Impossible Rogue Nation at the box office, despite not being nearly as good. Spectre, in my opinion, has absolutely no rewatch value. I would gladly sit down and watch any of these three movies again. Okay, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, or Skyfall. I love all three of them. I would sit down and watch any of them any day of the week. Spectre, I have no ambition to ever see this movie again. I just don't. It had no impact on me. It really felt just like the worthless, tacked-on cousin of this new series. And I just don't know what the filmmakers were thinking here, to be honest, guys. In the end, I'm giving Spectre a D+. Sorry, guys. I hope you liked it better than I did, and if you did, please let me know. And if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button to see more.